Dawn. Welcome to Only the Veggie Best, where I make mostly whole food but always plant-based recipes. And today we are going to make a quiche, a plant-based quiche. And when I was growing up, every year on Christmas morning, my mom had quiche Lorraine blueberry muffins and bagels with cream cheese for us for breakfast on Christmas morning. We were allowed to open our stocking first, and then we had to stop and we had to have breakfast before we could continue on and open our gifts from under the tree. And it was torturous. But anyway, I decided to continue that tradition when I had children. Then even now as they are adults, I still continue that tradition, only nowadays, being that I eat plant-based, I don't eat animal products anymore, I had to kind of revamp my recipes, and this quiche is one of them. It is so good. For those of you who don't know, quiche Lorraine has like bacon and onion and things in it. So I'm gonna be using plant-based foods to recreate the quiche. And I have everything all prepped and ready to go. So let's get cooking. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I have a little veggie broth in this pan, and I have about a cup of onion, maybe a little more, I don't know. It's in this ramekin. And I'm going to saute the onions along with approximately a cup of this bacon, plant-based bacon. So you can use any kind that you like from the store. This is just one from the grocery store. I think this one is Light Life brand. I do like the brand Benevolent Bacon. That one, I don't know if that's the brand, but that's the name of it. That one's really good. This one is good too. But I think the Benevolent Bacon has more fat in it though, so this one has a lower fat content. It's probably better. So I'm just going to let those cook and until the onions are softened, and the bacon may or may not get a little crispy. It doesn't really have to. You don't want to overcook it because you'll dry it out, and it doesn't really have to be crisp to go into this custard mixture that's going to be baked in the oven. You just want to, brown it up a little bit. So while the bacon and onion are cooking on the stovetop, I'm going to start making the custard filling. So we have half a cup of raw cashews that we're putting in our blender. Now I have a high-speed blender. If you don't have a high-speed blender, you may want to soak your cashews in some hot water for 20 minutes and drain the water off, and then use them before putting them in your blender, and they will blend up easier. If you have a high-speed blender, you really can skip that step. Now I also have 14 ounces of soft tofu. Well, I don't know, this isn't really soft. This is actually a firm tofu. My recipe I had soft tofu, but firm works just as well. I've made it with all different kinds of tofu. So that's 14 ounces of firm, extra firm, soft, whatever tofu you want. I also have 3 tablespoons of cornstarch and 3 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And if you don't want to use cornstarch, you could use some arrowroot powder, would be fine as well. And then I have Dijon mustard and miso paste. And I'm going to be putting a little salt in too, and like in my other recipes I've mentioned, if you are salt-free, you can always use more miso paste. Going to add a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of onion powder. And I'm going to give this a blend up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, now that this is all nicely blended, we are going to want to put this in a bowl, and then we are going to mix in our bacon and onions and a little bit of cheese. Of course, plant-based. So when I was blending this, I had to stop a couple of times and scrape down the sides, and actually you want to get right in the corners and the bottom also, because the nutritional yeast and the powders tend to stick in there. The other thing I forgot to mention that I did do is I added a couple of tablespoons of vegetable broth. You can use water, whatever you like, especially in that my tofu was drained pretty well and didn't have a lot of water left in it. Also, I used the firm tofu. So you want it to be able to blend well. So just add a little bit of vegetable broth, water, plant milk, as long as it's unsweetened, whatever you choose, you can add just to get things moving. And you may have to add, if you don't have a high-speed blender, you may have to add a little bit more, and you just really want to keep stopping, scraping everything down. You could also try this in a food processor. I've never made it in a food processor, but I'm sure that would work as well. And the other thing that you could do if you don't have a high-speed blender, or if you're using a food processor, is put your cashews in first and blend them up dry, kind of make them into a powder, and that would probably be a little easier on your non-high-speed blender or your food processor. Okay, so that looks good. I got that out into the bowl, and now we are just going to add our bacon and onions. This is a really nice non-stick pan. I mean, I did add a few more drops of, or tablespoons of vegetable broth. If you're wondering why I didn't use oil to cook my bacon and onions, it's because oil has so many calories in such a little tiny bit, and it has none of the good things like the whole foods the oil comes from has, like fiber, and it's stripped of everything except this fatty oil, and it's just really not good for us. So I try to limit fats. I'm not, fat free, of course, because I'm using this bacon in here. Plant-based bacon, it does have some oil in it, but I try not to add extra oil to our foods because it's just unnecessary calories, and it's not good for us. So what I do is I usually use this nonstick pan that I have that I really love. It's an aniline pan, and I treat it very delicately. I make sure it doesn't get scratched. I use only my wooden spoon, or I use these spatulas, and I store it separately from my other pans, and I just love it. So I just use a little vegetable broth to cook vegetables whenever I'm sauteing anything. And it's great. And then if it starts to get a little dry, you just add some more vegetable broth, that's all. So now we're gonna take a prepared pie crust that I just found at the grocery store. It happens to be vegan. This does have some oil in it, but these are like special dishes that I'm making. I wouldn't eat these foods every single day. Usually I eat oatmeal for breakfast, or I have fruit or a smoothie. So I'm going to now put the filling, and don't drop the bowl. I'm going to put the filling into the pie crust. Like I was saying, I wouldn't eat these every single day, but as a treat, it's so good. Oh, this is the second recipe I made recently that I forgot to put something in before I put it in the pan, because I'm chit-chatting and yapping. Anyway, the other day I made, if you watched my cheese sauce video, I put this little dish of cheese sauce in the fridge. This batch that I took it out of the blender before I added more liquid, and put it in this container to put in the fridge so that it would firm up and be firm, so I could use it in place of processed shredded vegan cheese. And as you can see, and it's been out of the fridge for a little while, it's quite firm. See how you can just pull pieces off like that. And this is the same recipe as my cheese sauce. So I'm just going to take little bits of this. I should have put this in the bowl, the big bowl, before I put it in the pie crust, but that's okay. This is kind of going to be like my thing, I think, on my videos. Just forget an ingredient and then have to figure out how to get that ingredient in at the very end when it should have gone in sooner. Oh, well. If everything were perfect, it would be so super boring. So the last time I made this, I used a lot of this cheese sauce, and it really didn't need as much, so I'm just You know, I obviously didn't measure to tell you guys the measurement, but I would probably say maybe a quarter of a cup of cheese sauce. Let's see what we can do with this since I already put it in here. So I'm just gonna kind of smush it in, right? That's like a culinary term, isn't it? Smush it in. It's all good. You know, one way that I get through things and I can feel better when things happen is to say, if this is the worst that ever happens to me, I'm in good shape, right? If this is the worst thing, that I was filming a video and I forgot to put the cheese in before I put it in the pie crust, that's the worst thing that ever happens to me, I'm golden. And like I said, if you watched my blueberry muffin recipe the other day, I did the same thing. I forgot to put the liquid. I forgot to put the milk. I know. Now you're saying, oh girl, how in the world did you forget that like most important ingredient? And you'll just have to go watch the video and see. It was pretty funny. And the funniest part is watching it back and like seeing the measuring cup of the milk mixture. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Like my eyes are just watching it the whole time going, how did you not see that? How did you not see that? All right, that's it. That is our quiche. I'm going to put this on a baking tray and I'm going to put it in a 350-degree heated oven. I'm going to bake it around 45 minutes. That's what we're doing. Okay, here's our gorgeous quiche. This quiche is really delicious and dairy-free, plant-based, healthy. I think you're gonna love it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. In the meantime, remember, life's too short to eat fake foods. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time.